The Saturday of week 2, based on Luke 13, verses 1 through 9. At that moment, some people came up and told them the news. Some Galileans had been in the temple, and Pilate had mixed their blood with that of the sacrifices. "Do you suppose," said Jesus, "that those Galileans suffered such things because they were greater sinners than all other Galileans? No, let me tell you. Unless you repent, you will all be destroyed in the same way." And what about those 18 who were killed when the tower in Siloam collapsed on top of them? Do you imagine they were more blameworthy than everyone else who lives in Jerusalem? No, let me tell you, unless you repent, you will all be destroyed in the same way. He told them this parable. Once upon a time there was a man who had a fig tree in his vineyard. He came to it looking for fruit and didn't find any. So he said to the gardener, "Look here, I've been coming to this fig tree for 3 years, hoping to find some fruit, and I haven't found any. Cut it down. Why should it use up the soil?" "I tell you what, master," replied the gardener, "let it alone for just this 1 year more. I'll dig all around it and put on some manure. Then if it fruits next year, well and good, and if not, you can cut it down." Standing in the crowd, you may well want to put your hands over your ears. These are some of the most ferocious words Jesus is recorded as having spoken. 2 horrendous incidents, one a bit of classic Roman brutality, a sort of state-sponsored terrorism, the other a horrific disaster with people killed by a falling building. You'd expect Jesus to be sympathetic. Surely, you think, he's lost it this time. What can he be talking about? Unless you repent, you'll all perish in the same way. Whatever does this mean? Then, as the crowd murmurs in dismay and people look at one another frightened and horrified, you begin to put it together. Jesus has been talking about God turning the world upside down. He has been doing things that have forced you and your friends to conclude that he really is the Messiah, even though he's not doing the specific things you thought a Messiah would. And in and through all his teaching, there has been a strange and dark note, that he has indeed come to rescue God's people, but that there will be many people who won't want to be rescued, or not by him, or not in that way. What on earth will happen next? Jesus' warnings are now very stark and specific. They have been already, and they will stay that way. If you follow him, you'll hear more in the same vein. And the point is this: Jesus isn't being vindictive or hostile. He doesn't want to see people's lives destroyed. He is acting like a fire officer trying to wake up people who are deep in a drug sleep in a building whose lower floors are already ablaze. If you don't get up, you're all dead. Saying that, yelling it at the sleeping forms, isn't unsympathetic. It's the kindest thing you can do. But what was the problem? What did Jesus want them to repent of? If you've been following him so far, you may know the answer. Ever since that opening sermon in Nazareth, Jesus had been telling people things most of them didn't want to hear. They wanted a rabble-rousing, let's go and bash the Romans sort of leader. Jesus went about healing people, talking about a few seeds producing a lot of fruit, and warning the rich and the self-righteous that their cozy world was under judgment. And now, as we begin to realize what was going on, he could see more clearly than most of his contemporaries that Israel was poised on a knife edge. One false move, one classic piece of anti-Roman activism, and the Romans would come and stamp on the nation once and for all. Jesus is desperate to save his people. He will go ahead and take the full force of Rome's anger onto himself. Anyone who follows him will find that a way of escape. But if they don't, if they embrace the way of violence that he has set his face against, then they are signing their own death warrants. The fruitless tree is asking to be cut down. Stern situations need stern warnings. For today, all right, you can take your hands off your ears now. Put them together in prayer and pray that Jesus' warnings about the dangers of violent nationalism may be heard in our world, which still needs those warnings so badly.